If you fly this jet, I'll marry you. The words cracked through the hangar like thunder. Everyone stopped moving. Tools froze mid-air, phones lowered, eyes turned. Damian Cross stood tall beside his silver Gulfstream G650ER. His suit cost more than some cars, his grin was sharper than the wing behind him. Around him stood investors, assistants, security, and 2 camera crews waiting for a sound bite. He loved an audience. Opposite him stood Arielle Monroe, hands stained with oil, shoulders square inside a set of old blue coveralls. She looked calm, but her pulse drummed in her ears. She had spent months cleaning this jet, wiping away other people's fingerprints, fixing small leaks that no one else noticed. She never thought she'd stand in front of the owner like this, never as the center of the story. The hangar smelled of jet fuel and arrogance. 1 hour ago, everything had been noise and business. The merger flight to New York had to leave by 10 a.m. Damian's pilot had collapsed right on the tarmac. Paramedics had rushed in. Now there was no one certified to fly. Investors argued in clusters. Millions hung on the next move. Damian barked into his phone, demanding a backup pilot. None were close enough. 90 minutes until the deal died. Arielle kept working quietly, sweeping near the rear wheel. She heard him curse and slam the phone shut. Something inside her stirred. She knew this aircraft better than anyone. She'd replaced its avionics, polished its fuselage, memorized its hum. She also knew she still carried a license, though no one here knew that part of her past. When she looked up, she met Damian's eyes for the first time. For a second, she saw not a billionaire, but a man drowning in ego. Then she said it. "I can fly it." Silence. The kind that eats sound. Damian blinked. "What did you say?" "I can fly the Gulfstream," she repeated, voice steady. "Before we dive into this story, tell us where in the world you're watching from and what time it is right now. Someone near you might be watching too. And don't forget to subscribe to support and appreciate the work we do on this channel." Laughter burst like fireworks. A cameraman zoomed in, hungry for drama. One investor clapped slowly. "The janitor thinks she's a pilot." Others joined in. Damian chuckled, walking closer, adjusting his cufflinks. "You fix jets, sweetheart. You don't fly them." Arielle met his gaze, eyes flat and firm. "I'm ATP certified. Type-rated on the G650. For a breath, the room went quiet again. Someone's phone chimed, no one answered. Damian tilted his head, curiosity flickering into cruelty. "You're telling me," he said, voice dripping with disbelief, "that you can take this aircraft to New York, right now?" "Yes." He smirked. The kind of smirk that built his empire and ruined others. "Fine. Fly this jet," he said, pointing toward the open door, "and I'll marry you." The words hit harder than he expected. People gasped, half shocked, half thrilled. Cameras rolled. It was the perfect clip for morning news, rich man's joke, working class punchline. Damian thought he'd win either way. If she backed down, he'd look clever. If she tried and failed, he'd look even bigger. But Arielle didn't flinch. She wiped her hands on a rag, tossed it aside, and said one word. "Deal." The crowd stirred. Some whispered she was crazy. Others started streaming live. A PR intern begged Damian to stop, but he waved her off. "Let her entertain us," he said. Arielle walked toward the stairs. Every step echoed through the hangar like a drumbeat. If you're enjoying Arielle's bold journey, subscribe now for more stories about people who rise above the odds. Let us know in the comments if you've ever had to prove yourself to someone who underestimated you. She didn't hear the laughter anymore. She heard engines, wind, and the voice of a man long gone, her old co-pilot, Marcus "Rocket" Hale, saying, "You were born for the sky." She climbed the stairs. The cockpit smelled of metal and memories. Her fingers hovered over the switches, then moved with confidence. Battery on. APU start. Screens flickered alive, glowing blue and green. Outside, the crowd fell silent. Damian's grin slipped just a little. The first engine coughed, then roared to life. The second followed. Warm air blasted out the back, rattling nearby ladders and ties. Someone whispered, "She's actually doing it." Another whispered, "She's type-rated, I checked." Damian swallowed, watching the jet come alive under her control. He hadn't meant for it to go this far, but now cameras were everywhere, and his pride had no reverse gear. He straightened his jacket, pretending calm. Inside, Arielle's hands stopped shaking. Every switch, every light felt like home. She pressed the mic. Atlanta ground, Gulfstream November 76 Alpha Mike, requesting startup. The tower replied almost instantly. 76 Alpha Mike, startup approved, expect runway 26. She smiled. The old rhythm returned. Damian's voice broke through her headset, sharp. "You can stop now. You proved your point." "No," she said quietly. "I haven't." She checked fuel, hydraulics, flaps. Everything perfect. The crowd watched, phones raised, mouths open. Damian felt heat crawl up his neck. He'd made a bet he couldn't control. His assistant whispered, "Sir, this is trending already, #FlyTheJet challenge." Damian cursed under his breath. Arielle's thumb rested on the ignition guard. Her heart pounded, but not from fear, from freedom. For years, she'd hidden her wings behind wrenches. Now, they spread again. She looked through the windshield, sunlight spilling over the tarmac. Then she said it, calm and clear, checklist complete. The turbines roared. The hangar filled with wind and wonder. Laughter died. Phones shook. Damian Cross, king of control, could only stare as the woman he'd mocked took command of his world. That moment, history bent. A mechanic became a pilot again. A dare became destiny. And every person in that hangar knew they'd just witnessed the start of something none of them could stop. 1 hour earlier, the sun climbed over Atlanta Fulton County Airport. The light hit the Cross Dynamics hangar, bouncing off steel and glass. Inside, people were already rushing. The air buzzed with stress. Today was the merger flight. Damian Cross had promised to be in New York by 10 a.m. to close a deal worth billions. Every second mattered. The Gulfstream stood ready, spotless and fueled. Assistants checked tablets. Mechanics checked panels. Investors checked watches. Damian walked through the hangar barking orders, phone glued to his ear. Everything must be perfect, he said again and again. Then it happened. His pilot, Captain Laird, was walking toward the jet when his steps slowed. He stumbled. His hand pressed against his chest. Before anyone understood what was happening, he dropped. The sound of his body hitting the floor stopped the room cold. Someone screamed. Others ran. Within minutes, paramedics rushed in. They lifted the pilot onto a stretcher. Damian followed, shouting, "He's our only G650 rated pilot." The paramedic just shook his head. "He's not flying anywhere today." Damian turned, face tight with panic. His assistant, Grant, ran up. "Sir, I'm calling other pilots." "We'll find someone." Damian snapped, "Do it fast." 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Each call ended with the same line, "No one available." Pilots were either in the air, out of state, or not certified for this model. The deal clock kept ticking. "Find anyone." Damian yelled. "I'll pay double." Grant whispered, "Sir, there's no one. Every G650 pilot within 100 miles is booked." Damian kicked a toolbox, tools clattering. Investors nearby exchanged nervous looks. One of them muttered, "If we don't leave soon, the New York partners will pull the deal." Arielle Monroe mopped near the back of the hangar, pretending not to hear. She wasn't supposed to talk during flight prep. She kept her head down, her heart steady. But every word of that chaos landed heavy. She knew this plane better than anyone. She'd fixed its circuits, replaced its sensors. Still, she was invisible. Damian paced like a storm. "We can't delay. Not today. Call the FAA, call someone, I don't care, get me a pilot." Grant tried again. "Sir, even if we find one, they'll need time to file a flight plan and get here. It's already 8:30. Damian's jaw locked. "Then we'll lose the deal." Arielle glanced at the clock. 8:33 a.m. She gripped the mop tighter. A voice in her mind whispered, "You could fly it." She pushed the thought away. That life was gone. She wasn't a pilot anymore. She had been one once. One of the best. But that was before the accident. Before everything burned. Before she lost rocket. Since then, she kept her distance from cockpits. But she couldn't stop loving the sound of engines. That's why she took this job, close enough to the sky, far enough for memories. Now, fate was circling back. Damian's assistant ran to him again. "Sir, we're officially out of options." Damian threw his phone. It hit the hangar wall with a crack. "We're not canceling this flight. Not for a heart attack." Investors looked at their watches, murmuring about backup plans, about selling shares. The pressure in the room was a living thing. Every tick of the clock was a blade. Arielle's gaze fell on the jet. Sleek. Ready. Waiting. It almost looked alive. She felt her stomach twist. She knew that sound the engines made when they came to life. She missed it. Then the shouting started again. Damian's voice. "If we miss this slot, we lose the runway clearance. Does no one understand what's at stake?" The fear around him spread. One intern whispered, "The merger's worth $2.8 billion. Another said, "He'll fire everyone if this goes bad." Arielle turned away. She shouldn't care. But she did. Then came the final straw. Damian laughed bitterly. "We're surrounded by planes, and not one of you can fly one." That laugh lit something inside her. The same thing that had kept her alive when her jet went down overseas. The part that didn't accept failure. She looked up. He was standing right there, angry, proud, desperate. Her voice came out steady. "I can fly it." He didn't even look at her at first. "What?" "I said I can fly the Gulfstream," she repeated. A few heads turned. Grant blinked. "You mean assist?" "No," she said. "Fly it." Now the hangar went still. Damian turned, face frozen in disbelief. "You?" "Yes." He looked her up and down. "You're a mechanic." "I was a pilot. Still am." The laughter started slow, then spread. One investor pulled out his phone to record. Another whispered, "This will go viral." Damian smirked. "You're serious?" "Yes." He stepped closer, towering over her. "Fine," he said, mocking. "Fly the jet, and I'll marry you." Gasps rippled through the hangar. Some laughed, others filmed. Arielle didn't blink. "Deal." For a long second, no one moved. Then Damian's smirk widened. "Fine," he said again. "Let's make it a show." The cameras rolled. Phones went live. A crowd gathered as Arielle walked toward the stairs of the jet. Grant whispered, "Sir, she's really doing it." Damian crossed his arms. "Let her try. It'll be good PR." But when Arielle placed her hand on the side of that plane, something in the air shifted. She didn't see the crowd anymore. Didn't hear the laughter. She heard the hum of engines in her memory and the calm voice of her old co-pilot, "Trust the sky, Ari." She took a breath. One step at a time, she climbed the stairs. The hangar went silent. No one knew that the countdown to history had just begun. Arielle worked quietly, head down, rag in hand. The hangar had calmed after the shock, but tension still filled the air like static. Everyone pretended to focus, but all eyes kept flicking toward the jet and the woman who had just agreed to fly it. To them, she was a mechanic with a wild mouth. To herself, she was someone trying not to remember. She scrubbed at a clean spot just to keep her hands busy. It wasn't dirt she was fighting, it was memory. She used to walk through hangars with pilots nodding to her, calling her Captain Monroe. She used to have a name that meant something. Now, she had a uniform with her name half faded and a job cleaning the same kind of plane she once commanded. Every bolt she touched had a ghost attached. Every reflection in the polished metal showed a version of herself she'd buried. She didn't talk much, no one cared to listen. But inside, she was still a pilot. The kind of pilot who could hear an engine's mood from 50 feet away. She could tell if something was wrong by the rhythm of its hum. The jet was talking to her even now, low and steady, almost like it knew who she really was. She'd been in this hangar for months. Most days were quiet. She kept to herself. Damian never noticed her. He didn't notice most people who didn't wear a suit or have money. That morning, though, everything changed. She heard him shouting about the pilot's collapse. She saw his face twist when he realized the flight might be cancelled. The investors swarmed around him, each voice louder than the next. She just watched, silent, wiping a wing that already shined. When the assistant said, "No backups left," she felt the air shift. Something in her chest clicked on. The voice inside her whispered again, "This is your sky." She hated that voice. It was the same one that had gotten her into the Air Force, the same one that had put her in the cockpit the day everything went wrong. But she couldn't shut it off. She looked up and saw Damian pacing near the jet, barking orders that went nowhere. Everyone was too scared to tell him the truth, the merger was slipping away. Arielle's hand trembled. Not from fear, but from wanting to do something. She'd promised herself she'd never fly again. Not after what happened to Rocket. Not after the crash. Not after seeing the fire swallow the sky. She'd built walls around that pain and locked the door. But the hangar's noise broke the lock. For a second, she saw herself back in a cockpit, headset on, checklist running. The controls under her fingers. The hum of turbines. The moment before takeoff when everything goes silent and the world holds its breath. Her chest tightened. That feeling had been gone for years, but it came roaring back like thunder. Still, she said nothing. She knew how people like Damian saw her. A worker. Background noise. Someone easy to overlook. That was fine most days. But not this one. She looked at the Gulf Stream. Sleek. Powerful. It didn't care who flew it. Planes only responded to skill. That was the one place in the world where fairness still existed. The shouting grew louder again. Damian slammed his phone down. "We're surrounded by machines and money, and not one person can get me to New York." That's when the decision made itself. Arielle dropped the rag, stood straight, and said, "I can fly it." Every head turned. She almost laughed at their faces. Shock. Confusion. Mockery. Damian's glare cut across the room. "What did you say?" "I said I can fly it." It wasn't courage. It was instinct. The same one that made her pull up seconds before the crash years ago. The same one that refused to let her be small. The laughter started right after. It always did when someone like her spoke up in a place like this. But she didn't back down. She didn't blink. When he challenged her, when he said those words, "Fly this jet and I'll marry you," she didn't even hesitate. Deal. And in that instant, her world flipped again. Now she stood alone near the plane, everyone watching, the hangar holding its breath. Her hands rested on the smooth edge of the fuselage. For a second, she closed her eyes. You can still do this. She remembered the first time she'd ever taken off solo. The silence before the engines screamed. The weightlessness when the wheels left the ground. That moment had made her feel infinite. Then came the crash. The memory flashed like lightning. The explosion. The smoke. The name she still whispered in her sleep. Rocket. She opened her eyes before the tears came. She wouldn't cry here. Not in front of them. The laughter had died down, replaced by whispers. Someone said, "She's crazy." Another said, "What if she's telling the truth?" Arielle stepped toward the stairs. The closer she got, the quieter the room became. Each step was a choice. Each step erased a piece of the fear that had chained her to the ground for years. She wasn't doing this for Damian. Or the bet. Or the cameras. She was doing this for the girl who used to dream above the clouds. When her hand touched the railing, the hangar fell silent. No one spoke. No one laughed. Every person in that room was waiting to see if the mechanic would actually become the pilot. Arielle took a breath. Her eyes lifted toward the cockpit window. Inside that plane was her past, her pain, and maybe her future. And she was done hiding from it. She climbed the stairs without looking back. The crowd only realized she was serious when they heard the cockpit door close behind her. "I can fly it." The words still hung in the air like smoke. Everyone in the hangar stared at her through the cockpit window, waiting for her to freeze. Arielle didn't. Her hands moved fast, flipping switches with muscle memory she didn't know she still had. The cockpit came alive. Lights blinked, screens glowed, and a low hum filled the air. Down below, Damian watched, arms crossed, pretending not to care. Inside, his gut twisted. He hadn't expected her to actually move, let alone touch his jet. Around him, people whispered. "Is she serious? She's touching the controls. Does she even know what she's doing?" Arielle did. Every movement was burned into her from years of training. Left hand on the master switch, right on the fuel control. Everything she'd buried came rushing back like it had been waiting for this moment. "Ma'am, step away from the controls," a worker shouted from the floor. She ignored him. "Battery on," she said softly. "Hydraulics on." Damian's assistant, Grant, panicked. "Sir, should we stop her?" Damian smirked. "Let her play. The cameras are loving this." He didn't realize the cameras were loving her, not him. Arielle pressed the radio switch. Atlanta ground, Gulfstream November 76 Alpha Mike requesting startup. The voice on the other end came quick. 76 Alpha Mike, startup approved, expect runway 26. Everyone in the hangar froze. The controller had approved her. That meant she was licensed. She'd used the correct call sign, correct phrase, correct tone. You couldn't fake that. Damian blinked. "Wait, they cleared her." Grant nodded slowly. "That only happens if she's in the system." The first engine coughed, then roared awake. A wave of hot air blew across the hangar. Paper flew. Jackets flapped. Someone shouted, "She actually started it." The sound filled the whole building. It wasn't just noise, it was power. Arielle smiled for the first time in years. Her fingers danced over switches like they'd never stopped. Engine 1 stable. Engine 2 starting. Damian's grin faded. He couldn't laugh anymore. This wasn't entertainment, it was a storm. The second engine screamed to life. The jet vibrated like a heartbeat returning after a long sleep. The ground crew backed away. Even the reporters stopped talking. Inside, Arielle took a deep breath. She could feel sweat on her palms, but her mind was clear. She remembered Rocket's voice from years ago: "If you ever get scared, listen to the engine. It'll tell you what to do." So she listened. The engines purred, steady, loyal, alive. She spoke again into the mic, "Checklist complete." The tower replied, "Roger, 7-6 Alpha Mike. Report ready for taxi." Down below, Damian shouted, "Stop her before she gets to the runway." Grant hesitated. "Sir, if we interfere now, it could be recorded as obstruction. There are news cameras here." Damian's face flushed red. "This is my plane." "Not right now, it isn't," someone muttered. Every camera in the room turned toward Arielle. She looked like she'd never left the cockpit. Calm. Focused. Sharp. Her hands moved without hesitation. The more she worked, the quieter the hangar became. Even the people who'd laughed now leaned forward, waiting for what came next. The billionaire had mocked her in front of the world, but she was about to make the world forget him completely. Arielle's headset crackled. "Gulfstream 7-6 Alpha Mike, cleared to taxi runway 26 via Alpha." Her eyes softened. That voice from the tower, it was real. This was happening. She turned her head slightly and saw her reflection in the glass. Not a janitor. Not a broken pilot. Just her. Back where she belonged. Outside, Damian grabbed a megaphone. "Arielle. Get out of that plane right now before." But the roar of the turbines drowned him out. She couldn't hear him anymore. Her hand steadied on the throttle. Her breathing slowed. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't even angry. She was home. She keyed the mic again. "Atlanta ground, Gulfstream 7-6 Alpha Mike ready for taxi." The reply came clear. "Taxi to runway 26 via Alpha, hold short of runway 26. She nodded. "Taxi to runway 26 via Alpha, hold short of 26. 7-6 Alpha Mike." Her voice was smooth, professional. The kind of voice only a real pilot could have. From the hangar floor, Damian dropped the megaphone. He finally understood. This wasn't a stunt. This was skill. This was control. Arielle released the parking brake. The jet inched forward. The movement was small but enough to shock everyone watching. The massive Gulfstream was rolling under her command. Grant whispered, "Sir, she's actually doing it." Damian said nothing. The cameras streamed live. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read. "She's a real pilot. This is history. Who is she?" Arielle tuned it all out. Her focus was locked. The switches, the dials, the checklist, everything aligned. Flap set. Trim neutral. Anti-ice on. Fuel checked. Each word was a brick in the wall she was rebuilding, her confidence, her identity, her place in the sky. The engines hummed, waiting. The tower's voice came again. 7-6 Alpha Mike, hold position. Stand by for takeoff clearance. She smiled. Standing by. Below, the billionaire who had mocked her was silent for the first time in his life. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked small. Arielle didn't care. She wasn't flying for him. She was flying for herself, for Rocket, for every girl who had ever been told she couldn't. Her hands rested on the throttles. The hum of the engines filled her bones. The storm had begun. And this time, she wasn't running from it. By now, the hangar was packed. Workers had stopped what they were doing. Investors had stepped back from their calls. Assistants, security guards, even people from other hangars came running. Phones were out. Cameras were live. Everyone wanted to see how far this mechanic would go. Inside the Gulfstream, Arielle stayed calm. Her headset buzzed softly. The tower waited for her next move. She scanned the screens, checking every system. Everything looked perfect. Outside, Damian Cross tried to stay cool. He leaned on a railing, acting like this was all a show he controlled. But his jaw was tight. He could feel the cameras shifting away from him and toward her. His PR team whispered, "Sir, this is trending everywhere. Hashtag Fly the Jet Challenge just hit #1. Damian muttered, "Let them watch. She'll quit soon." But Arielle wasn't quitting. She spoke into the mic again, voice calm and sharp. Atlanta ground, Gulfstream 76 Alpha Mike ready for taxi. 76 Alpha Mike, taxi to runway 26 via Alpha. Hold short of 26. Roger that, she said. The jet began to move. Slowly at first, then smoother as she rolled down the taxi line. The massive aircraft glided like it had been waiting for her all along. From the floor, people gasped. She's moving it. She knows what she's doing. The laughter that had filled the hangar was gone. Now there was tension. Curiosity. Respect creeping in where mockery used to live. Damian watched, heart racing. He tried to look bored, but his hands shook. His assistant Grant whispered, "Sir, we might need to call the FAA before this turns into a lawsuit." Damian didn't answer. He couldn't. His pride had locked him in. Stopping her now would look weak. Letting her fly would make him look foolish. Either way, he was trapped by his own arrogance. Inside the cockpit, Arielle's hands moved with quiet precision. She called out her own checklist. Flaps 15. Trim set. Anti-ice on. Fuel balanced. Her voice was steady, her focus unbreakable. She had done this 1,000 times before, in training, in war, in memory. Each movement brought her closer to who she used to be. She looked out the window. The taxiway shimmered under the morning sun. The tower came back on the radio. 76 Alpha Mike, line up and wait runway 26. Lining up and waiting, 26. The jet turned smoothly onto the runway. The nose faced straight ahead. The world seemed to pause. Outside, phones shook in trembling hands. Streams filled with comments. "She's really gonna do it. This woman is history." Billionaire about to eat his words. Every camera in the hangar caught the same thing, Arielle Monroe, the black mechanic in oil-stained coveralls, sitting in the pilot's seat of a private jet worth $70 million. Damian rubbed his forehead. His PR manager whispered, "Sir, the live stream just hit 20 million viewers." He glared. "It's a stunt. She won't actually take off." But Arielle was already calling the tower. Atlanta Tower, 76 Alpha Mike ready for departure, runway 26. The controller's voice came back. 76 Alpha Mike, cleared for takeoff, runway 26. Wind 240 at 5 knots. Good luck up there. She smiled. Cleared for takeoff, 26. 76 Alpha Mike. Her fingers wrapped around the throttles. She pushed them forward. The engines roared. The sound filled the hangar and spilled across the airport. People outside covered their ears. The jet began to roll. Damian's heart stopped. She can't. But she could. And she was. The jet picked up speed fast. The nose lifted slightly. Tires screamed against the runway. In seconds, the plane hit takeoff speed. And then, she pulled. The wheels left the ground. Every laugh in the hangar died. The massive Gulf Stream rose like a bird breaking free from a cage. The crowd fell silent, watching it climb into the sky. No one spoke. No one moved. Even Damian couldn't breathe. Arielle's voice crackled through the tower radio, calm as a whisper. Positive rate, gear up. Gear up, she said again to herself, pulling the lever. The wheels folded neatly into the body. From the ground, it looked effortless. Beautiful. Impossible. Grant turned to Damian. She's gone, sir. She's actually flying. Damian said nothing. He just stared at the shrinking shape in the sky. Inside the jet, Arielle felt tears sting her eyes. Not from fear, from freedom. She was flying again. For the first time since the crash, she felt alive. Every sound, every vibration, every cloud outside the window reminded her why she'd fallen in love with the sky. She looked down at the runway falling away beneath her. The hangar where they laughed was now just a speck. She thought of Rocket. The last thing he'd said before the crash, "Don't let the sky forget you." She whispered, "I didn't." The radio crackled again. 76 Alpha Mike, contact Atlanta departure on 126.9. Have a good flight. She pressed the switch. 126.9, 76 Alpha Mike. Everything sounded normal. Professional. Perfect. The world below exploded with attention. News channels interrupted broadcasts. Social media exploded. Headlines formed in real time: mechanic takes billionaire's jet. Woman proves genius under pressure. Who is Arielle Monroe? Inside the hangar, Damian's phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters. Investors. Lawyers. Everyone wanted a statement. But he had no words. All he could see was his jet disappearing into the blue. The same jet he'd used to mock her now carried her story higher than his entire empire ever had. Are you rooting for Arielle? Hit subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories of courage resonate with you. The same crowd that laughed at her now cheered her name. And for the first time in Damian Cross's life, he wasn't the story. He was the lesson. Arielle's hands tightened on the yoke. The engines hummed steady. The sky opened wide in front of her. She smiled through the tears and whispered, "Let's fly." And the world, for the first time, believed she could. The jet cut through the sky like a knife through silk. Arielle sat steady in the pilot's seat, every movement smooth, controlled, calm. Her headset crackled softly, tower voices fading behind her as she climbed higher. The ground dropped away fast. The sky opened wide. Below, Atlanta shrank to dots. Inside the hangar, people still stared at the empty space where the jet had been. Phones still streamed, showing a speck moving across the clouds. It was real. She was really flying. Inside the cockpit, Arielle focused on her job. Every switch, every sound mattered. The hum of the engine steadied her heartbeat. She called out each step the way she'd been trained 2 years ago. Flaps up. Climb power set. Autopilot on. The jet responded perfectly. Smooth. Loyal. It was like the machine remembered her. Her headset came alive again. 76 Alpha Mike, contact Atlanta departure. She answered without missing a beat. Atlanta departure, 76 Alpha Mike, climbing through 1000 for flight level 380. The voice on the other end said, Roger, 76 Alpha Mike. Radar contact. Proceed as filed. Simple words, but they meant everything. It meant she was in control. Legally, officially, professionally. No one could deny it now. Back on the ground, Damian stood frozen in disbelief. His PR manager shouted numbers, 70 million live views, sir. It's everywhere. But he didn't respond. The laughter that had filled his hangar hours ago had turned into silence. Every camera pointed up, chasing the woman who had just destroyed his pride. In the cockpit, Arielle took a deep breath. Her hands rested gently on the yoke. The vibration through the controls felt like an old heartbeat she'd missed. She leaned back slightly, feeling the rhythm of the engines. "Good to see you again," she whispered to the plane. She adjusted her headset, eyes scanning the instruments. Everything was smooth. Airspeed steady. Altitude climbing. Outside, clouds stretched across the horizon like a soft wall. She had flown through worse. Much worse. Her mind flashed back to that day, Afghanistan, the mission, the warning light, Rocket's voice. "Pull up, Ari. Pull up." Then the fire. Then the silence. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to breathe. "Not today," she whispered. "Today we fly." She reached over to switch on the cabin camera. The feed streamed to the jet's Wi-Fi system, broadcasting live. Millions of people watched her face appear on screens worldwide. Calm. Focused. Powerful. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The whole world could already see what this moment meant. She spoke quietly to the viewers, not for fame but for truth. When people tell you that you can't, remember, it usually means they're afraid you might. The comments sections exploded. Viewers typed non-stop, "She's inspiring. I'm crying. This is history." The flight data ticked upward. 25,000 feet. 30,000. 38,000. The jet leveled off. She leaned back, finally breathing normally. She pressed a button, and soft music filled the cockpit. The same song Rocket used to play during missions. She let it run quietly in the background while she checked the navigation again. Everything perfect. Back at the airport, news vans lined the fences. Reporters yelled into cameras. "The mysterious mechanic has done the impossible. She's taken off in the billionaire's private jet and proven she's a licensed pilot." Every channel had the same headline, "Arielle Monroe, the woman who flew." Damian's phone wouldn't stop ringing. His lawyer called. His investors called. His mother called. He ignored them all. He stared at the sky like it had betrayed him. He'd made a bet to humiliate someone. Instead, he'd turned her into a global hero. In the cockpit, Arielle switched to cruise mode. She sipped water from a bottle she'd found in the side compartment. Her hands didn't shake anymore. The fear that once lived in her had burned away. What was left was peace. The sun caught the nose of the jet. Light filled the cabin. She blinked and smiled. "Rocket," she whispered, "we're home again." She looked out the window, watching the horizon glow. The clouds were endless, but she wasn't lost in them, she was leading them. Down below, airports all over the country tuned into her frequency just to listen. Pilots texted each other, "She's good. Smooth takeoff, perfect climb." One veteran pilot even said on air, "Whoever she is, she's a pro." Arielle heard that through the open channel. She smiled but kept her focus. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "I just love to fly." The controller laughed. "That's obvious, ma'am." The world was listening. Every small exchange became a message of hope to people who'd ever been overlooked. Arielle adjusted the throttle slightly. The engines purred back their answer. The sound filled her ears, and she closed her eyes for just a second. She wasn't cleaning jets anymore. She wasn't the forgotten mechanic in the corner of the hangar. She was who she'd always been, a pilot born for the sky. The control tower came back. 7-6 Alpha Mike, radar contact lost momentarily. Confirm on course. She checked her instruments. Everything fine. On course, level 380. Copy that. You're clear all the way to New York. Her eyes flicked to the clock. She'd make it in record time. Back on the ground, Damian finally spoke. Get me a statement ready, he muttered to his PR team. Say I gave her permission. One of them whispered, Sir, she already said on the stream you made a bet. He froze. She said what? Everyone heard it. It's all over the news. He sank into a chair. The camera lights around him felt hot. His pride cracked in silence. Meanwhile, Arielle flew on, steady as ever. The world below her grew smaller by the minute. She didn't think about Damian. She didn't think about revenge. She thought about every girl who had ever been told she wasn't enough. Every dream that had been laughed at. Every locked door she'd been forced to knock on twice. Not anymore, she whispered. Her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. Ahead was New York, and destiny. She adjusted her headset one last time. 7-6 Alpha Mike, level at 380. Everything's beautiful up here. The controller replied, copy that, ma'am. Keep doing what you're doing. You've got the world's attention. Arielle smiled faintly. Then I hope they're watching for the right reason. The engines hummed steady, louder, stronger. The sky stretched endless in front of her. And for the first time in years, she wasn't running from her past. She was flying straight through it. The higher the jet climbed, the quieter the world became. The clouds faded below like smoke trails. The hum of the engines was the only sound left. Arielle stared straight ahead, hands light on the yoke, but her mind had already slipped into the past. She didn't want to remember. But the sky always made her remember. Afghanistan. The sand. The heat. The endless missions. Back then, she wasn't scrubbing jets, she was leading them. Captain Arielle Monroe, one of the youngest female pilots in her unit. The kind of pilot who stayed calm when everyone else panicked. The one her team trusted with their lives. And the one who lost hers in the blink of an eye. It was supposed to be a routine flight. She and her co-pilot, Marcus "Rocket" Hale, had done it 100 times. Rocket was the loud one, the kind who laughed even when bullets flew. He called her Ace, said she was the reason they'd never crash. That day, he was wrong. She still heard the radio call sometimes. The warning alarm screaming. The light flashing red. Rocket shouting, engine 2's gone. We're losing altitude. She remembered the fire. The smoke. The spin. Then silence. When she woke up in a hospital bed, they told her he didn't make it. She never flew again. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flames. Every time she heard an engine, she felt the fall. The guilt never left. She told herself she didn't deserve the sky anymore. Until today. Now, as the Gulf Stream hummed beneath her, those memories came back hard. The same sky that had taken everything from her was now carrying her again. Her hands trembled for a moment. She looked down. Not now, she whispered. Not again. She took a deep breath and forced her hands to steady. She looked at the engine readings, perfect. Smooth. Trustworthy. This isn't then, she told herself. This is now. Her headset crackled. 7-6 Alpha Mike, maintain flight level 380, report passing waypoints. She pressed the switch. Maintaining 380, 7-6 Alpha Mike. The professional tone hid the storm inside her. Back on the ground, reporters played her takeoff on loop. Analysts guessed who she was. Someone found an old Air Force file. Arielle Monroe, decorated pilot, discharged after a crash that killed her co-pilot. Within minutes, every news network was talking about it. The world now knew the woman flying that jet wasn't just a mechanic. She was a fallen pilot who had risen again. But Arielle didn't know the world was watching. She was fighting her own battle, inside her head, where Rocket still lived. His voice echoed, clear as day. Don't freeze, Ace. The sky listens when you do. She almost laughed. He'd said that right before every takeoff. Her throat tightened. You'd laugh if you saw this, she whispered. Me, flying again in some billionaire's toy plane. If Rocket were here, he'd tell her to fly higher. To never let the world define her by one fall. She swallowed the lump in her throat and checked her gauges again. Everything normal. Smooth climb, perfect pressure. Still, she couldn't shake the memory. The smell of burning metal. The feeling of gravity ripping everything down. The helplessness. The noise. Her grip on the controls tightened. The present blurred with the past. They found her hours later. The medic said she was lucky. But luck felt like the wrong word when she asked about Rocket and they looked away. She never flew again after that. She couldn't. Every time she heard an engine, she saw fire. Every time she looked at the sky, she heard his voice. That was the end of Captain Arielle Monroe. Until today. The present came rushing back as the plane trembled slightly in a light crosswind. Her eyes opened. The sky was calm, not burning. The hum in her ears wasn't fire, it was flight. She touched the yoke lightly, grounding herself. Not that day, she whispered. Not anymore. The control panel blinked steady green. No alarms. No fire. Just life. She leaned back and let out a long breath. Rocket, we finally finished the flight. Her headset crackled. 7-6 Alpha Mike, confirm position. She pressed the switch. On course, 38,000, smooth ride. The controller replied, copy that. Looking good. She smiled. Simple words, but they hit deep. Back on the ground, the world couldn't look away. The live stream feed now had over 300 million views. News anchors called her a hero. Some called her a miracle. Others said she was revenge in motion. They replayed the crash footage from her Air Force days, the old reports, the news clippings that had once painted her as reckless. And then they showed the current footage, her flying calm and flawless across the country. It was redemption live streamed to the planet. But Arielle wasn't thinking about headlines. She wasn't thinking about Damian, or the bet, or the millions of strangers cheering her name. She was thinking about one man. The man who died believing in her. She pulled a small dog tag from under her shirt. The metal was scratched but still readable. Marcus Hale. She held it between her fingers and said softly, we made it, Rocket. We touched the stars. Tears slid down her cheek, but she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall. It wasn't pain anymore, it was peace. She looked out the window. The cloud stretched like a calm sea below her. The sun hit the wings at just the right angle. The reflection almost looked like flames again, but softer this time. Not destruction. Memory. She whispered, I'm not scared of you anymore. The cockpit was silent. Only the engines answered, low and steady. Down below, Damian's PR team tried to spin the story again. Sir, one said, if you frame this as empowerment, you could save the company's image. Damian didn't speak. He just stared at the feed showing her in the sky. Sir. He finally said, she doesn't need me to save her image. She's saving mine. The team exchanged looks. None of them knew what that meant, but it was the first honest thing he'd said all day. In the air, Arielle adjusted the flight path slightly. 7-6 Alpha Mike, requesting direct Kennedy approach, she said. Approved, came the reply. Copy. Her eyes stayed forward, steady. The fear that once lived behind them was gone. She'd faced the worst memory a person could have and walked through it. She spoke quietly to the empty seat beside her. "You can rest now, Rocket. I've got the controls." The engines hummed back, almost like applause. At that exact moment, the live stream hit 500 million views. People across the world watched in silence, tears on faces of people who'd never flown a plane, never met her, but somehow felt like they were flying with her. Arielle didn't know that. She didn't need to. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing peace, and she'd finally found it. She leaned back in her seat, eyes still wet, voice calm. "Checklist complete. Everything's good." She exhaled deeply. "We're going home." The autopilot held steady. The sky stayed clear. And for the first time in years, the name Arielle Monroe didn't sound like a ghost. It sounded like a survivor. Back in Atlanta, the hangar was chaos. The Gulfstream was gone, only its echo left behind, but the noise it made on takeoff was still shaking everyone's nerves. Mechanics, reporters, and security guards stood frozen in disbelief. Phones buzzed non-stop. Screens showed the live stream still running strong. The woman they had laughed at hours ago was now flying above the clouds while their billionaire boss watched his reputation fall apart on live TV. Damian Cross hadn't moved since she took off. He just stood near the runway window, his reflection pale against the glass. Behind him, his staff whispered but didn't dare speak too loud. One assistant finally broke the silence. "Sir, the stock is dropping." Damian blinked. "How much?" "Almost 12% in the last hour." He didn't answer. His mind couldn't focus on numbers anymore. For the first time in his life, the numbers didn't matter. The cameras had already won. The story had escaped his control. Reporters filled the hangar entrance. Questions fired from every side. "Mr. Cross, who is she? Did you really make the marriage bet? Was this a publicity stunt?" He said nothing. One reporter shoved a mic close to his face. "Sir, people are calling her a hero. Do you have a comment?" He turned slowly. His jaw tightened. "No comment." The reporter smirked. "So it's true." The crowd erupted in questions again. Security had to push them back. Damian walked toward his office in silence. Grant, his assistant, followed close behind. "Sir, maybe you should say something. If you control the story, we can limit the damage." Damian stopped and looked at him. "The story's not mine anymore." Grant hesitated. "Then whose is it?" He didn't answer. He just kept walking. Inside the office, TV screens showed every major news channel replaying the same footage, Arielle's calm face in the cockpit. The title across every screen read, "Mechanic turns pilot, the flight that shamed a billionaire." One anchor said, "This is more than a stunt. It's a symbol." People everywhere are saying this woman represents every person who's ever been underestimated. Damian lowered himself into a chair. The sound from the TVs filled the room. His empire, his pride, his image, it was all fading in real time. Grant stood awkwardly by the door. "Sir, we have to issue a statement." Damian stared at the floor. What could I possibly say? That I dared her because I thought she'd fail? Grant stayed quiet. Damian's eyes flicked to the screen. A reporter was reading Arielle's Air Force record. "Captain Arielle Monroe," she said, "former U.S. pilot. Survived a crash in Afghanistan. Honorable discharge. Certified on multiple aircraft including the G650. Grant swallowed hard. "She's real." Damian nodded slowly. "She was always real. I was the fake one." The word surprised even him. He stood and looked out the window again. The runway stretched empty, quiet. But the hangar itself was louder than it had ever been. Phones rang. Cameras flashed. Investors yelled into earpieces. The whole place felt like it was shaking. His phone buzzed. It was his mother. He almost ignored it, but something in him said answer. "Damian," her voice came through. "Yeah, Mom. What did you do?" He sighed. "Something stupid. I saw the news," she said. "That girl, Arielle, she's incredible." "I know," he whispered. "You made a fool of yourself, son." "I know that too." She paused. "Then fix it." He hung up but didn't argue. Outside the hangar, news vans multiplied. A helicopter hovered above. Police started blocking off roads. The airport's media department sent representatives to manage the crowd. Everyone wanted to be part of the story. One mechanic leaned on a toolbox and whispered to another, "Man, I didn't even know she could fly." "None of us did," the other said. She kept her head down. "Never bragged." "Yeah," the first one said, watching the live stream replay on his phone. "She didn't need to brag." The cameras in the hangar zoomed in on them, capturing the moment of realization. The same people who laughed at her were now speechless. In the office, Damian sat at his desk staring at the company logo on his wall, Cross Dynamics. The word "Cross" looked wrong now. Heavy. Out of place. Grant's phone buzzed again. "Sir, CNN wants an interview in 10 minutes. Tell them no." "BBC." "No." "What do you want me to tell them?" Damian stood up. "Tell them the truth. Tell them she earned this." Grant looked confused. "That's not going to fix the stock price." "I'm not fixing the stock price," Damian said. "I'm fixing myself." He walked past Grant and headed back toward the hangar. Cameras turned instantly. Flashes hit his face. Questions shouted again. "Mr. Cross, do you regret it?" "Yes," he said simply. "Do you think she'll come back?" "She doesn't owe me that." The crowd fell quiet for a second. It was the first real thing he'd said since the story broke. A reporter asked, "Why did you say you'd marry her?" He smirked sadly. "Because I thought it was a joke. Turns out, the joke was on me." The sound of camera shutters filled the air. Meanwhile, in New York, corporate offices were already drafting proposals to reach out to Arielle. Airlines wanted to sponsor her. Talk shows wanted interviews. Someone from NASA even posted publicly, "We'd hire her tomorrow." Everywhere people looked, her name was trending. #Arielle Monroe had overtaken #FlyTheJet challenge. Grant came running back to Damian with his tablet. "Sir, look at this." It was a video clip from the live stream, Arielle looking straight ahead in the cockpit, saying, "Respect isn't given. It's earned." The clip had over 400 million views. Damian's throat tightened. "Play it again." He watched her face, calm and proud. Every word cut through the noise around him. Grant whispered, "Sir, this woman changed everything in one day." Damian nodded. "Yeah. And I tried to stop her with a bet." He turned and walked away again, ignoring the cameras. He didn't want to be in the spotlight anymore. He just wanted to understand how someone he'd stepped on had climbed higher than he ever had. The hangar fell quiet behind him as he walked out. Everyone had stopped talking. On the TVs, her flight path neared New York. Inside the jet, Arielle's voice came through the speakers in the hangar, live from the cockpit. Cross Dynamics 1 heavy descending through 20,000, direct JFK. Her tone was steady. Calm. Commanding. The workers froze, listening. Damian stopped walking. The sound of her voice filled the space where his pride used to live. And for the first time, he didn't feel angry. He felt small, and grateful. He whispered to no one in particular, fly safe, Captain. The hangar went silent again. The same place that once laughed at her was now listening like it was church. The world had changed in a single flight. And deep down, Damian Cross knew that nothing in his life, or hers, would ever be the same again. The jet was halfway to New York when the first shake hit. It wasn't much at first, a small bump, a quick tremble, but Arielle felt it instantly. Her instincts kicked in. Her eyes moved fast across the screens. Altitude steady. Speed normal. Then the warning light blinked once. Turbulence ahead. She took a slow breath and tightened her grip on the yoke. "All right," she whispered. "Stay calm." Outside, the sky looked smooth, but she knew better. The radar showed a small band of unstable air up ahead. She clicked the mic, New York Center, 76 Alpha mic. Light chop at 380. Request climb to 400 to avoid. Approved, 76 Alpha mic. Climb and maintain 400. Climb 400, she replied. She pushed the throttles forward, and the jet began to rise again. The air around her thickened with sound, a low hum growing louder. Her stomach tightened. She'd been through worse, but this was different. Millions of people were watching. One wrong move and everything could fall apart. The turbulence hit harder. The plane jolted left, then right. A warning chime rang once. She gritted her teeth and kept her hands steady. "Easy, girl. Hold together." The live stream cameras caught it instantly. The viewers saw the shake, the flashing light, the brief look of focus on her face. Comments exploded. "What's happening? Is she in danger? Please don't let anything go wrong." Back in Atlanta, Damian froze at the feed. "What's happening to her?" he asked no one in particular. Grant checked the data on his tablet. "Looks like turbulence. Normal at that altitude." "Normal?" Damian snapped. "She's alone up there." "She's a pilot, sir. She knows what she's doing." Damian didn't move. His eyes stayed glued to the screen, his heart pounding. In the cockpit, Arielle made small adjustments. Climbing through 390, she called into the mic. "Roger, maintain 400, the controller replied. She felt the jet settle as it cleared the rough patch. The shaking eased. The lights stopped blinking. The warning sound faded away. She let out a long breath. "That's more like it." The engines purred steady again. She smiled faintly, not out of pride, but relief. Her headset buzzed again. 76 Alpha mic, how's the ride now? "Smooth again," she said. "Looks like the storm's behind us." "Good to hear. You handled it like a pro." She smiled. "That's the only way I know how." The chat feed online exploded with relief. People typed, "She's okay. She's so calm. She's built different." Clips of her controlling the jet through the turbulence went viral within minutes. Every channel replayed her hands on the controls, her calm eyes, her voice steady under pressure. It became the moment everyone talked about, the second she proved she wasn't just lucky, she was great. In New York, reporters waited near JFK, preparing for her arrival. Helicopters circled the area. The story had grown beyond a flight, it was now a movement. Every woman, every underdog, every person who'd ever been told, "You can't," was waiting for her to land. But Arielle didn't think about that. Her focus stayed on the flight. She ran another checklist out loud. Cabin pressure stable. Fuel balanced. Nav aligned. Systems normal. Her tone was low and calm, like a heartbeat. She leaned back slightly. The world below her looked peaceful again. Then the tower spoke. 76 Alpha mic, expect descent in 100 miles. JFK is ready for you. Copy that. Thank you. The controller chuckled. You've got the whole city watching, ma'am. She laughed softly. No pressure, right? He replied, you've already done the hard part. Back in Atlanta, Damian still hadn't left his office. The screens in front of him showed news anchors discussing her courage, her calm, her background. He heard one say, Arielle Monroe isn't just flying a plane. She's flying for every person who's been underestimated. The words hit him harder than he expected. He rubbed his temples. For the first time, he saw clearly what he'd done. His arrogance had turned into her platform. His insult had turned into her stage. He whispered, she won. Grant looked up. Sir. Damian didn't repeat it. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew. In the cockpit, the sky smoothed out again. Arielle reached for the photo clipped near the dashboard, her and Rocket back in their flight suits, smiling. She touched it gently. You'd love this, wouldn't you? The plane shook again, just slightly this time, like a playful nudge. She grinned. Yeah, I know. Stay focused. The controller came back. 7-6 Alpha Mike, you're cleared to start descent at pilot's discretion. Copy that. Descending in 20. She took one more look outside. The sun was starting to dip, turning the clouds gold. She didn't stare long, there wasn't time for that, but she felt something deep inside her settle. The fear that used to live in her hands was gone. She'd faced the crash, the mockery, the pressure, the sky itself, and she'd stayed standing. Rocket, she whispered, you were right. Once you fly again, the fear can't touch you. Down below, the live stream hit its next peak, 700 million viewers. People in airports stopped boarding planes just to watch her feed. Screens in Times Squares, restaurants, and classrooms showed her flight path blinking across the map. She'd started the morning as a nobody. Now, the entire world was flying with her. Damian stood again, pacing the room. How long till she lands? Grant looked at the radar feed. Less than an hour. He nodded slowly. I'm going to New York. What? She deserves to see my face when she lands, he said. Not because she owes me anything, but because I owe her. Grant hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Damian grabbed his coat and walked toward the hangar. For once, the cameras didn't follow him for glory, they followed him because the story wasn't about him anymore. In the cockpit, Arielle began the descent checklist. Her voice was steady. Altimeter set. Landing data reviewed. Approach armed. The radio clicked again. 7-6 Alpha Mike, cleared to descend to 10,000. Descending to 10,000. 7-6 Alpha Mike. The jet dipped gently. The ground began to rise in the distance. Arielle smiled faintly. Almost home. Her reflection in the glass looked strong now. No fear. No pain. Only purpose. The world below waited. The sky, once her enemy, now carried her like it knew she'd earned it. New York air traffic control crackled through the headset. 7-6 Alpha Mike, descend and maintain 5,000 feet. Expect runway 22 left. Descending to 5,000, Arielle replied. Her voice stayed calm, but her heart was pounding harder with every word. She was almost there. The skyline was still a faint blur in the distance, but she could already feel the gravity of what waited below. Millions of people were watching. Reporters lined the runway. Helicopters hovered above the airport, capturing every second. But inside the cockpit, it was silent except for the hum of the engines and the soft buzz of the radio. She called out her checklist. Seatbelt signs on. Landing lights on. Flaps set 10. The jet obeyed every command. It felt alive, like it trusted her. 7-6 Alpha Mike, Contact JFK approach on 128.1. Over to 128.1. Good day. She switched frequencies. JFK approach, 76 Alpha Mike descending through 7,000 for 5,000. The reply came quick. 76 Alpha Mike, radar contact. Cleared direct to final approach, runway 22 left. Winds 210 at 5 knots. You're clear all the way in. She smiled. Cleared all the way in. The words felt heavier than they sounded. She wasn't just clearing for landing, she was clearing her life of everything that had held her down. Below, the city stretched into view. The skyline glowed under the afternoon light. The closer she got, the calmer she felt. On the ground, the crowd waited behind the gates. Reporters shouted into microphones. The mechanic turned pilot is minutes from landing at JFK. TV screens in homes, offices, and airports showed the radar line moving closer. Some viewers prayed. Some cried. Most just watched in silence, waiting for the final chapter of a story they never expected to care about. Damian's jet, the symbol of arrogance hours ago, was now the symbol of redemption. Inside the cabin, Arielle touched the photo clipped near the console again. "We made it, Rocket," she whispered. "Just one more landing." Her headset buzzed. 76 Alpha Mike, reduce speed to 210, maintain until 5-mile final. Reducing to 210. The jet slowed smoothly. She adjusted the flaps. Flaps 15. Outside, the clouds thinned. The runway lights in the distance looked like tiny stars waiting to guide her home. Back in Atlanta, the hangar was still filled with people watching the live feed. No one worked. No one spoke. Even Damian's harshest critics sat still, eyes glued to the screen. The camera angle from inside the cockpit showed Arielle's hands steady on the controls, her eyes focused. The live comments section flooded with hearts and messages. "You got this, Captain. The sky belongs to you. She's landing for all of us." In New York, Damian stood near the tarmac with security and airport officials. He hadn't said a word the entire flight there. He'd come to face his failure, but also to meet the woman who turned it into something greater. He looked up as the control tower's radio speakers carried her voice. 76 Alpha Mike, gear down. He felt his chest tighten. The crowd around him started clapping. Arielle pulled the lever. The landing gear dropped with a soft thud. 3 green, she said. "We're good. Flaps 25. Approach stable. Speed 160. She keyed the mic again. JFK Tower, 76 Alpha Mike on final, runway 22 left. 76 Alpha Mike, cleared to land, runway 22 left. Wind 205 at 5. Welcome home. Her lips curved into a small smile. Cleared to land. 76 Alpha Mike. That was it. No turning back now. Her hands rested on the throttles, eyes locked on the runway. The lights grew bigger. The city stretched around it like an audience waiting for the curtain to fall. Speed 150. Flaps 30. She guided the jet down steady, calm, precise. The same girl who once cleaned planes was now flying one over New York with the entire world watching. The tower voice came again. "Looking great, 76 Alpha Mike." "Thank you," she said softly. At 1,000 feet, she whispered to herself, "Rocket, let's do this right." The jet descended perfectly on glide slope. 500, the automated voice called. 400. 300. She eased the throttles. Speed steady. Nose down a touch. 200. The runway lights flashed beneath her. Her focus narrowed. Her breathing slowed. 50. 30. 10. She pulled back gently. The wheels kissed the ground with a soft thump. Perfect. Applause erupted across the world. On screens, in living rooms, in classrooms, in airports, everywhere. The jet rolled straight and smooth down the runway, slowing to a crawl. Arielle exhaled for the first time in what felt like forever. "Welcome to New York," she said quietly. 76 Alpha Mike, turn left at taxiway Bravo, contact ground on 121.9. She smiled. Left on Bravo. Over to ground. She turned the jet off the runway, taxiing slow, steady, graceful. The cameras outside zoomed in. The world watched as the engines slowed and the plane came to a stop. Inside the cockpit, she flipped switches one by one. The turbines wound down. The sound faded. Silence filled the cabin. Then she leaned back and whispered, "We did it, Rocket." On the ground, Damian stepped forward. He didn't care about cameras anymore. His eyes stayed fixed on the jet's window. When the door opened and the stairs lowered, the crowd cheered. Security held the line, but people still shouted her name. Arielle. Arielle. She appeared at the top of the stairs, calm and steady. The same oil-stained coveralls. The same woman who had been mocked only hours ago. She didn't wave. She just stood there for a moment, breathing it all in. The noise. The flashes. The disbelief turned into respect. In that silence between cheers, one truth settled over everyone watching: she hadn't just landed a plane. She'd landed her life back where it belonged. Arielle took the first step down. Damian watched from below. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just waited. The wind moved through the crowd. Reporters shouted questions, but Arielle ignored them all. Step by step, she walked down until her boots hit the ground. The crowd erupted again. Damian took one step forward. For once, there was no pride, no anger, no arrogance in his face, only honesty. He whispered, mostly to himself, "She really did it." Arielle looked at him once, nodded, then turned her eyes back to the sky. Because this landing wasn't the end of her flight. It was just the beginning. Want to see what happens next in Arielle's journey? Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a chapter. Share your predictions in the comments about where her story goes from here. The wheels touched down so soft that no one could believe it was real. The Gulf Stream rolled smooth, straight, quiet. The kind of landing pilots called a greaser. The crowd on the ground gasped, then cheered so loud it drowned out the sound of the engines. Arielle's hands stayed on the controls, calm and firm, as she guided the jet down the runway. She eased the throttles back, watching the speed drop. Spoilers up. Reverse thrust. The plane slowed to a stop, perfectly centered. Not a wobble. Not a mistake. The radio crackled. 76 Alpha Mike, welcome to JFK. Congratulations on a textbook landing. She smiled. Thank you, Tower. Everyone down here's clapping for you. Tell them thank you, she said softly. She taxied off the runway and stopped near the hangar where the crowd was waiting. Reporters, pilots, airport workers, everyone had gathered. Helicopters hovered above. Cameras zoomed in. The scene looked unreal, but Arielle stayed calm. She flipped switches, one by one, shutting down the aircraft. Engines off, she said quietly. The roar faded. The silence that followed was almost holy. She leaned back in her seat and took one deep breath. Her fingers trembled slightly now that it was over. She wasn't scared, just overwhelmed. She looked at the photo clipped on the console, the one of her and Rocket in their flight suits. We did it, partner, she whispered. Outside, the applause grew louder. Ground crew ran to the plane, waving and clapping. Reporters shouted questions. How does it feel? Did you really take off without permission? What will you do next? Arielle didn't move yet. She wanted one last quiet second. For years, she'd dreamed of hearing that sound again, the silence that came after a safe landing. It was the sound of peace. She unbuckled her harness and stood up slowly. The cabin lights flickered soft. She picked up her headset, folded it, and placed it neatly on the console. Then she reached for the dog tag hanging around her neck and kissed it once. This was for you, Rocket. The door opened. Warm air rushed in. Down below, cameras flashed. Reporters screamed. Security tried to keep the crowd back, but everyone wanted to see her face up close. Arielle stepped into the doorway. For a moment, the world stopped. She stood there, oil-stained coveralls, messy hair, steady eyes. No smile. No wave. Just strength. Then she started down the stairs. Every step echoed. Every flash from a camera froze her in another frame of history. When her boots hit the ground, the crowd erupted again. Some people clapped. Some cried. Some just stared in disbelief. One reporter shouted, "Captain Monroe. Are you aware you just broke every view record in live stream history?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her focus wasn't on fame. It was on freedom. She walked past the crowd, calm and sure. The cameras followed like waves. Her pace never changed. Then she saw him. Damian Cross. The man who started it all. The billionaire who mocked her that morning. He stood near the edge of the runway surrounded by security, his suit jacket off, his tie gone. He looked smaller now, not in size but in pride. They locked eyes. The crowd quieted without being told. Even the reporters lowered their mics. Arielle stopped in front of him. She didn't say a word. Damian swallowed hard. "I don't know how to start." "Try the truth," she said. He nodded. "I was wrong." She said nothing. "I thought I was untouchable," he continued. "I thought money made me better than people. But you just showed the world that character flies higher than cash." Still, she didn't speak. Her silence said more than any words could. He lowered his head. "I made a bet to humiliate you. And you turned it into a lesson I'll never forget." She looked at him for a long second, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "My resignation," she said. He blinked. "Resignation? You don't get to claim my victory," she said. "You mocked me in front of the world. Now the world knows who I am. I don't need your company anymore." He nodded slowly. "I deserve that." She turned to walk away, but he called after her. "Arielle, thank you." She paused, but she didn't look back. "Don't thank me. Learn from me." The crowd erupted again. People cheered her name, chanting, "Arielle. Arielle," over and over until it filled the airport. TV anchors spoke through the noise, their voices shaky. History has just been made. A woman once dismissed as a janitor has just completed one of the most watched flights of all time. Social media exploded. Quotes, edits, remixes, hashtags, everything spread at once. Hashtag Arielle Monroe hit 1 billion mentions in under 2 hours. Back at the hangar in Atlanta, workers replayed the footage on every screen. The same people who laughed that morning now clapped. One mechanic said, "She was one of us, man. She made it." Another replied, "No, she is us." At JFK, Arielle walked through the crowd. Reporters tried again. "What are you going to do next?" She stopped just long enough to answer. "I'm going to help others fly." That line alone broke the internet again. She reached a quiet corner of the tarmac and looked up at the jet. The sunlight hit the metal just right, making it shine like new. For a second, she thought of Rocket again, his laugh, his stubborn grin, the way he'd always say, "Land smooth, ace. Leave no bumps behind." She smiled faintly. "Greaser landing, Rocket. Just like you taught me." Behind her, Damian stood watching. For once, there was no envy in his eyes, only respect. He turned to the reporters and said, "Let her have her moment. She earned it." The crowd parted around her. A small girl wearing a pilot hat ran forward, breaking through security. "Miss Arielle," she shouted. "I want to fly like you." Arielle bent down, smiled for the first time, and said, "Then promise me you'll never let anyone tell you that you can't." "I promise," the girl said. Arielle stood, patted her shoulder, and walked away. The cameras followed until she disappeared behind the hangar doors. The live stream didn't end right away. It stayed on the plane, the empty runway, the echo of applause still in the air. On the screen, the view counter hit 1 billion. No one could turn it off. Because everyone who watched knew they had just seen more than a flight. They'd seen a life take off. The jet sat quiet now, engines off, crowd still buzzing around it. Arielle stood near the stairs, staring at the people pressed against the barricades. Reporters, fans, airport workers, everyone wanted a word, a picture, a piece of her story. But she didn't rush. She needed this moment to breathe. The air was warm, heavy with noise. Helicopters hovered above. Flashbulbs popped non-stop. Yet somehow, she felt calm. This was the part that used to scare her, the attention, the eyes, but not today. Today she'd earned it. She took one step forward. The crowd roared. Each footstep sounded louder than the last. Every movement felt like a heartbeat. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She just walked slow, steady, grounded. Reporters shouted over one another. "Captain Monroe. How does it feel to prove everyone wrong? Are you staying with Cross Dynamics? Is it true you used to clean planes here?" She didn't answer any of them. The truth was already out there. She didn't need to explain it. As she walked, people reached out, mechanics in dirty jumpsuits, kids wearing toy pilot hats, women holding up signs that said, "Thank you for showing us it's possible." She nodded at them all, her quiet way of saying this is for you too. At the end of the runway, Damian Cross waited. He stood by himself, no cameras, no assistants, no security holding him up. Just him, the billionaire who once owned every headline, now standing small in front of the woman who'd taken his pride apart without ever raising her voice. She stopped in front of him. The world fell silent. For the first time all day, Arielle spoke. "You still think it was a joke?" Damian shook his head. "No. I think it was the truth I needed to hear." She tilted her head. "You mocked me to look powerful." He nodded. "And you proved that power doesn't mock. It listens." The crowd listened too. Reporters zoomed in. Phones streamed live. But for once, this wasn't about the spectacle. It was about the moment, the way one choice had flipped everything upside down. Arielle reached into her pocket and handed him a sealed envelope. He frowned. "What's this?" "My resignation," she said. He hesitated. "You're quitting?" "I'm not quitting," she said softly. "I'm done working for people who think I need permission to rise." He stared at the envelope for a long second, then took it. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," she said. "But I owe myself freedom." She turned to leave, but Damian spoke again. "You changed me today, Arielle. I can't fix what I said, but I can tell you this, what you did out there wasn't just flying. It was truth with wings." She stopped but didn't turn around. "Then let that truth guide how you treat people next time." He nodded slowly, eyes wet though he tried to hide it. You have my word. She walked past him. The cameras caught every step. The crowd erupted again, chanting her name, but she didn't look back. She just kept walking. The airport security cleared a path for her. She could have stopped for interviews, could have smiled for headlines, but that wasn't her. She wasn't flying for attention. She was flying to remember who she was. As she reached the terminal entrance, a young reporter, maybe 20, broke through the line and asked in a shaky voice, "Ms. Monroe, what do you want people to remember about today?" Arielle stopped. She looked the girl right in the eye. "That nobody can take away what you're built to do," she said. "They can laugh. They can doubt. But when it's your time to take off, no one can stop the sky from opening." The girl froze, too stunned to reply. Arielle nodded once and kept walking. Inside the terminal, the crowd pressed against the glass walls, trying to see her. Airport workers dropped tools to clap. Pilots saluted as she passed. Even passengers waiting for flights stood from their seats. Her phone buzzed. Texts flooded in. Airlines offering jobs. Talk shows wanting interviews. Messages from strangers saying she'd inspired them. She ignored them all. She didn't need new titles. She needed new purpose. She reached the quiet hallway near the airport offices. A security guard followed but didn't speak. He just nodded respectfully. "That was the smoothest landing I ever saw," he said. She smiled a little. "Thank you. You really did all that alone?" "Not alone," she said. "Someone taught me how to fly a long time ago." The guard nodded, not understanding the deeper meaning, but she didn't explain. As she walked, her footsteps slowed. Everything that had happened, the dare, the takeoff, the flight, the landing, it all replayed in her mind. She realized she hadn't just proven them wrong. She'd freed herself from years of silence. She found an empty bench near the end of the hall and sat down. For the first time since morning, she let herself rest. Her hands still smelled like fuel and metal. Her shoulders ached, but her heart was light. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Rocket's dog tag. The engraving was faded, but the letters still clear, Marcus Rocket Hale. She rubbed her thumb across it and whispered, "We did it. They finally know." Her eyes lifted to the big glass window ahead. Outside, her jet sat under the sunlight, gleaming like a medal. The crowd still surrounded it, snapping photos, pointing at the cockpit she once thought she'd never sit in again. Her voice came out soft. "You said one day we'd touch the stars, Rocket. I think we did." She smiled to herself. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a message from an unknown number. The text read, "Captain Monroe, this is NASA. We'd like to talk." She stared at it, then laughed quietly. "Of course you would." She didn't reply. "Not yet." She stood, straightened her coveralls, and headed toward the exit. As she walked through the glass doors, the sound of cheering hit again. Cameras flashed. Reporters yelled her name. She raised her hand once, not to wave, but to signal goodbye to that version of herself that had been mocked, doubted, dismissed. Every step she took away from the jet was a step into something new. Freedom. Purpose. Legacy. Behind her, Damian watched from a distance. He didn't chase her, didn't speak. He just watched as she disappeared into the crowd. One of his assistants asked quietly, "What now, sir?" He sighed. "Now I listen." Back outside, Arielle walked through the sea of people. Each person she passed clapped or said thank you. Some cried. Some simply smiled. When she reached the end of the crowd, she stopped and looked up. The same sky that once broke her was wide open again. "Thank you," she whispered to it. "For letting me come back." Then she walked on, the crowd parting around her, the cameras fading behind her. The world had changed in one day, but for Arielle Monroe, this was just her first step on the ground she'd earned. By nightfall, the city that had cheered Arielle's landing was glowing with her name. Every news channel replayed the flight. Every social feed was filled with her quotes. Her face, calm, strong, unshaken, was everywhere. But miles away, Damian Cross sat alone in his penthouse, the curtains drawn, the TV lighting his face. He watched the replay again. The jet lifting off. The crowd gasping. Her steady hands. Her quiet power. He'd seen it 100 times already, but he couldn't stop. Each time it played, it hit harder. The news anchor's voice cut through the silence. Cross Dynamic stock has dropped 15% since the viral flight. Shareholders demand an emergency meeting. CEO Damian Cross has not yet made a statement. He muted the sound. The silence hurt more than the noise. His phone buzzed non-stop. Calls from investors, from the board, from PR. He ignored them all. There was nothing left to say. He'd built his world on arrogance, and now it was collapsing under the weight of one woman's truth. He poured himself a drink and stared out at the skyline. His reflection in the window looked tired, smaller than it used to. "You did this," he said quietly to himself. "You made her a hero." For the first time in his life, he didn't sound angry when he said it. A knock came at the door. He didn't answer. It came again, louder this time. He sighed and opened it. Grant, his assistant, stood there, holding a stack of folders. "Sir," Grant said, voice careful. "We need to talk. The board is calling for an emergency session tomorrow morning." Damian nodded slowly. "They want me gone." Grant hesitated. "They want answers." He walked back inside, motioning for Grant to follow. The TV still played the same clip, Arielle stepping off the jet, handing him that envelope. The crowd cheering. Her walking away. Grant lowered his voice. "They say your silence is making it worse." "What should I say?" Damian asked, still staring at the screen. "That I made a bet to humiliate her. That I laughed while she risked her life." Grant didn't respond. Damian turned. "There's no speech that fixes that." He took another drink, set the glass down, and rubbed his eyes. "When I started this company, I told myself I'd never need anyone. I thought power meant control. But he stopped." Grant waited. "She what?" "She showed me what real control looks like," Damian said. "It's not shouting. It's not owning. It's staying calm when the world laughs at you." Grant looked uncomfortable. "Sir, if you admit that, you're admitting defeat." Damian almost smiled. "Maybe that's the point." He walked toward the big wall where a photo of the Cross Dynamics headquarters hung framed in gold. He took it down. The glass cracked slightly as it hit the floor. Grant stepped back. "Sir." Damian held up a hand. "I've spent years pretending to be invincible. All it did was make me blind. That woman, she worked under my nose. She fixed my planes, she cleaned my hangars, and I never once looked at her as a person." He picked up the envelope Arielle had handed him earlier. Her resignation. He opened it again, reread the short note inside. It only said 3 words, "Freedom takes flight." He read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Grant shifted nervously. "What should I tell the board?" Damian stared at the screen one last time. "Tell them I'll speak tomorrow. And tell them I'm done running my company with my ego." Grant nodded and left quietly. When the door shut, Damian stood alone again. The city lights glimmered like reminders of everything he'd lost and everything he'd learned too late. He sat down, opened his laptop, and started typing. His statement was short, plain, and honest. "I was wrong. I disrespected someone who deserved my respect. Today, she reminded the world, and me, that no amount of money or power equals integrity. Cross Dynamics will survive, but I don't deserve to lead it. I resign as CEO, effective immediately. He hit send before he could change his mind. Within minutes, his inbox flooded with replies. Shock, anger, confusion. None of it mattered. The story would break in seconds. He stood and walked to the balcony. The air was cold, sharp. He could hear the noise of the city below, the same city that once worshipped him, now whispering his downfall. He didn't care. For the first time, the silence inside him didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Back at the airport, reporters covered his statement live. The anchor said, "Breaking news, Damian Cross has resigned as CEO of Cross Dynamics, calling his actions toward Arielle Monroe disrespectful and shameful." He praised her as the company's true example of strength. The crowd outside the terminal cheered again. For once, the name Cross wasn't the headline, it was Monroe. At her hotel room across town, Arielle watched the same broadcast. She didn't smile. She just sat quietly, listening. When the anchor read Damian's quote out loud, she nodded once. "About time," she whispered. Her phone buzzed. Messages poured in again, pilots, mechanics, veterans, students. All saying the same thing, "You made us believe again." She set the phone down and looked out her window. The city lights flickered below. For the first time in a long time, she felt light too. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. She hadn't flown to end someone's career. She'd flown to start something new. She turned on her laptop and opened a blank document. The words came fast. Project Rocket, a training program for young women who dream of flying but can't afford the chance. Funded by donations. Built from experience. Created by those who never stopped believing. She saved the file. The name Rocket made her smile again. Back in his penthouse, Damian poured out his last drink and dumped the bottle. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift. For the first time, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a man who'd finally told the truth. The next morning, news outlets exploded again. Damian Cross resigns. Arielle Monroe's flight changes everything. Fall of a titan, rise of a legend. But for both of them, the noise didn't matter anymore. She had flown free. He had finally fallen, but in falling, he found something he'd lost long ago, humility. If you're enjoying this story of redemption and courage, subscribe to support our channel and let us know in the comments, which character do you relate to more, Arielle or Damian? And as the world argued about what would happen next, both of them sat in silence, looking at the same sky. One had conquered it. The other was learning to respect it. The morning after the resignation, Arielle woke to a noise she hadn't heard in years, silence that felt peaceful. No alarms, no shouting, no doubt. Just quiet. She sat up in bed and stared at the ceiling. For a moment, she almost didn't believe the night before was real. Then her phone started vibrating. Notifications stacked on top of each other. Articles. Messages. Opportunities. She unlocked it and read the top message out loud. "Congratulations, Captain Monroe. You've inspired the world." She smiled a little, then put the phone down. "Inspiration's not enough," she said softly. "We need action." She walked to the window. The city outside was awake, alive, different. Her face was still on billboards. But she didn't feel famous. She felt responsible. Her mind went back to the file she had started the night before, Project Rocket. She opened her laptop and reread what she'd written. Project Rocket, a training program for young women who dream of flying but can't afford the chance. The idea felt right. Real. Necessary. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about everyone like her who'd been laughed at, pushed aside, told they weren't enough. She started typing again. Mission, teach skill, build confidence, and prove that the sky doesn't belong to privilege, it belongs to courage. Her hands moved fast, her focus sharp. She drafted a plan: instructors, sponsors, hangar space, training simulators, mentorship programs. Each line of text felt like a piece of something bigger. When she finished, she leaned back and whispered, "Rocket, I told you we'd build something that lasts." Her phone buzzed again, unknown number. She answered. "Hello? Captain Monroe?" a woman's voice said. "This is Elaine Porter from the FAA. We just wanted to say congratulations." "Thank you," Arielle said. "We saw your proposal online. Project Rocket. It's brilliant. If you're serious about it, we'd like to help." Arielle blinked. "You've seen it already?" Elaine laughed. "The whole country has. Someone leaked your draft to the news this morning." Arielle's heart skipped. "It's public." "Public and viral," Elaine said. "You might want to check your inbox. You're getting offers from every aviation school in the country." When the call ended, Arielle opened her email. Thousands of messages flooded in: pilots volunteering to teach, organizations offering funding, companies pledging equipment. It was overwhelming. She scrolled through until one name stopped her cold. From Damian Cross. Subject: I want to help. She hovered over it for a long moment, then opened it. Arielle. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want to be part of what you're building. You were right, power should lift others, not crush them. If you'll allow it, I'd like Cross Dynamics to fund the first year of Project Rocket. No conditions, no credit. Just support. Damian. She read it twice, unsure how to feel. The old part of her wanted to delete it. The new part of her, the one that had learned grace, knew better. She typed a short reply. Then show up. Not as a CEO. As a student. She hit send before she could change her mind. Hours later, she stood in front of a rented hangar on the edge of the city. The place was empty except for a few folding chairs, a whiteboard, and a giant banner she had printed that morning: Project Rocket, flight school for everyone who dared to dream. Volunteers began arriving: pilots, mechanics, teachers, and a few kids who had watched her story online. She shook hands, smiled, gave directions. "Let's make history again," she told them. Cameras rolled, but this time, the story wasn't about her. It was about them. By noon, the first press conference began. A reporter asked, "Captain Monroe, what's the goal of Project Rocket?" She looked straight into the camera. "The goal is simple. We're not here to prove we can fly, we're here to make sure no one ever has to prove they belong in the sky." Applause broke out. Someone else shouted, "Are you working with Damian Cross?" She paused. "If he shows up, we'll see." That answer alone trended within minutes. Later that afternoon, a black car pulled up. The crowd turned. Damian stepped out, wearing jeans and a plain shirt. No cameras followed him, no security. He looked like a man trying to start over. He walked up to Arielle quietly. "You meant what you said?" "Every word," she replied. "Then I'm here to learn." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Start by carrying those chairs inside." He laughed once, but he didn't argue. He picked them up and followed her lead. The crowd watched in disbelief. The man who once mocked her now worked beside her. That night, as the volunteers cleaned up, a small group of girls approached Arielle. One of them, maybe 12, said, "Miss Arielle, do you think someone like me can really fly?" Arielle smiled. "Someone like you is the reason we built this." The girl grinned. "Then I'm gonna be the first." Not the first, Arielle said softly. The next. The next morning, news channels covered it live. Project Rocket officially launches today, the anchor said. The program already has over $5 million in pledges, including an anonymous donation believed to be from Damian Cross. At the hangar, new faces arrived. Students from all backgrounds lined up, ready to learn. Arielle stood at the front, holding a clipboard, trying not to cry. She gave a short speech before the first class began. Today isn't about me. It's about what happens when we stop letting fear and pride decide who gets to fly. You all belong here because you dared to show up. That's the only qualification that matters. The crowd clapped. Damian, standing at the back, clapped too. When the lesson began, Arielle sat beside the first student, helping her adjust a flight simulator. See this, she said. You pull steady, not fast. Feel it before you force it. The girl smiled nervously. Like dancing? Arielle nodded. Exactly like dancing. Hours later, after everyone left, Damian stayed behind. He walked up to her, holding one of the Project Rocket flyers. You did it, he said quietly. We did it, she corrected. He shook his head. You're giving me too much credit. She smiled faintly. No. I'm giving you a second chance. He looked at her, truly looked at her. You're a better person than I deserve. Maybe, she said, but I'm the kind of person the world needs more of. He laughed softly. You're not wrong. As the lights dimmed, she stood in the hangar doorway, watching the sunset glow against the empty runway. The same kind of light that had once marked her fall now marked her rise. Behind her, the banner flapped gently in the wind, Project Rocket, the sky is for everyone. She whispered, we made it, Rocket. And we're just getting started. And this time, the world wasn't laughing. It was listening. 3 months later, the hangar that once stood empty was alive with sound. Engines hummed, laughter echoed, voices called instructions back and forth. The sign above the entrance read, Project Rocket Flight Academy. Arielle stood in the middle of the floor, clipboard in hand, watching a group of new trainees run their first simulator drills. There were 12 of them, different ages, different stories, but all with the same dream. She smiled. All right, cadets, she called out, what's rule number 1? They answered in unison, fear is fuel. That's right, she said. Let it push you, not stop you. The crowd of students laughed and clapped. Most of them had never even touched a real plane before. Now they were learning from someone who had faced fire, humiliation, and still flown higher. Project Rocket had grown faster than anyone expected. Donations poured in. The FAA approved partnerships. Airlines offered internships. Even Congress had mentioned it in a hearing about diversity in aviation. But Arielle didn't care about the spotlight. She cared about the work. Every morning, she got there before the first student and left after the last one. She taught ground school, ran safety drills, and fixed planes herself when the mechanics were tired. She wanted her students to see that leadership wasn't about standing above, it was about standing beside. She wiped her hands on a rag and turned to her assistant instructor, an older pilot named Captain Brooks. How's the simulator holding up? Smooth, he said. These kids learn fast. You got something special here. She nodded. They just needed someone to believe in them. He smiled. And you did. As they talked, the hangar door opened. Damian Cross walked in, wearing jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. No camera crew, no entourage, just him. The room went quiet for a second. Everyone recognized him. Arielle didn't flinch. She just crossed her arms. You're early. He chuckled. You said I could help with the maintenance class. She nodded toward the back. Grab a wrench, then. The students are working on the hydraulic system. He smiled and joined the group without another word. The students whispered to each other in disbelief. The billionaire who once laughed at her was now learning how to fix landing gear. Arielle called out, "Don't stare, cadets. The sky doesn't care how much money you have, remember." They laughed, and Damian smiled, embarrassed but genuine. Later that day, Arielle gathered everyone for a quick announcement. "Listen up," she said. "We've been officially recognized by the National Aviation Foundation. That means our certificates are now valid across the country." The hangar erupted in cheers. She held up a form. "And we just got our first grant to expand to Houston and Chicago." Even louder cheers followed. One student shouted, "Captain, does that mean more people like us can join?" Arielle smiled. "Exactly. That's the whole point." Damian watched her from the side, the pride in her voice clear. For the first time in years, he felt something real, a purpose that didn't come from money. After the students left for lunch, he walked up to her. "You built this in months. You realize what that means, right?" "It means we're doing something right," she said. He nodded. "And it means I was doing everything wrong for years." She gave him a small smile. "You learned. That's what matters." He hesitated. "Arielle, I've been thinking. I want Cross Dynamics to partner with Project Rocket officially. Not for PR. For real." She crossed her arms. "Partnership how?" "I'll give you access to our training aircraft, our engineers, even our scholarship fund. You'll run it how you want. I'll just write the checks." She studied him carefully. "You sure this isn't guilt talking?" "It used to be," he admitted. "Now it's gratitude." She paused, then nodded. "All right. But this time, we're equals." "Agreed." They shook hands. That handshake made headlines by nightfall. Not because of the deal, but because of what it symbolized. Forgiveness beats pride. In the weeks that followed, Project Rocket grew into something unstoppable. News outlets called it the most inclusive flight academy in the world. Every week, new students arrived, young girls, veterans, people who'd never believed they'd ever step into a cockpit. The academy became a beacon of hope. Planes painted with the rocket logo started showing up in airports everywhere. The slogan read, "The sky has no gatekeepers." Arielle kept teaching. She never traded her jumpsuit for a suit. She still got her hands dirty, still sat beside students during flight drills, still reminded them that every great pilot started as a dreamer. One evening, while the hangar lights dimmed, she sat at her desk filling out paperwork. Damian walked in, holding a newspaper. "They're calling you the face of modern aviation," he said. She laughed. "That's a stretch." "Not really," he said. "Look." He handed her the paper. The headline read, "From mockery to movement, Captain Arielle Monroe is changing the sky." She shook her head. "I didn't do this alone." "Maybe not," he said. "But you started it." She smiled. "Rocket started it. I'm just keeping the promise." He sat beside her. "You ever think about flying again? Commercial, private, anything?" She leaned back, looking at the planes outside. "Every day. But I'm doing more good down here." He nodded slowly. "You're right. The world's flying higher because you stayed on the ground." The next morning, the academy hosted its first graduation ceremony. Families filled the hangar. Students wore uniforms with the rocket patch stitched on the sleeve. Arielle stood on stage, microphone in hand. She looked out at the crowd. 3 months ago, this was just an idea, she said. Now it's a movement. You didn't just learn to fly, you learned to believe. The crowd clapped. Some wiped tears. She continued, every one of you represents someone who was told they couldn't. Every one of you proved them wrong. And when you leave here, don't forget, your wings aren't just for flying. They're for lifting others. The applause shook the walls. After the ceremony, Damian stepped forward with a surprise announcement. I've decided to rename Cross Dynamics Training Division to Rocket Aerospace, he said. To honor the man who taught her to fly, and the woman who taught us what flying really means. The room went silent. Then it erupted. Arielle blinked, speechless for once. You didn't have to do that. He smiled. No. I needed to. That night, when everyone left, Arielle stood alone in the quiet hangar. She looked at the empty seats, the banners, the planes lined up in a perfect row. The place that once symbolized her pain now breathed purpose. She whispered, Rocket, we built a legacy. Her voice echoed softly, carried by the hum of distant engines. And somewhere in that silence, it felt like the sky answered back. 6 months passed. The world had changed, and so had everyone in it. Project Rocket had grown into something far bigger than Arielle imagined. 3 new training centers had opened, Houston, Chicago, and Denver. Each one filled with students who once thought flying was a dream too far away. Everywhere she went, people stopped her to say thank you. She appreciated it, but she always said the same thing, don't thank me. Thank the sky. It gave me another chance. That morning, the hangar in Atlanta was brighter than usual. It was the first annual Project Rocket fundraiser. Rows of folding chairs filled the space. Reporters lined the back, cameras ready. Volunteers arranged banners and refreshments. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Arielle stood near the stage, checking the mic. She wore her same blue coveralls, clean this time but still simple. She didn't want to change who she was now that the world was watching. Captain Brooks walked over, smiling. Full house again, he said. You ever think we'd get this far? Arielle shook her head. Not like this. He nodded toward the entrance. You sure you want him here? She didn't need to ask who. Yes. He's part of this story, too. A few minutes later, Damian Cross arrived. No cameras followed him. He came alone, wearing jeans and a plain jacket. People turned when they saw him. Some whispered. Some frowned. Arielle walked toward him and smiled politely. You came. He nodded. You invited me. You're still welcome, she said. He looked around the hangar. I haven't been here since that day. It looks different now, she said. He smiled faintly. So do you. Before she could respond, someone called her to the stage. She turned to him. Sit in the front row. You'll want to hear this part. He nodded and found a seat. The crowd hushed as she stepped up to the microphone. Good morning, everyone, she began. 6 months ago, this hangar was just a dream. Now, it's proof that dreams can fly if you give them space. Applause filled the room. She waited for it to fade. When I first thought about Project Rocket, I didn't plan to change anything big, she said. I just wanted to make it easier for someone like me to believe again. But you all turned it into something greater. You turned pain into progress. The audience clapped again. She continued, today we celebrate more than numbers. We celebrate courage. We celebrate second chances. And we celebrate every person who decided to fly anyway. Then she paused. And that includes someone who's here today. The crowd turned toward Damian. Arielle said, we all make mistakes. Some big, some loud, some public. But mistakes don't end you, they teach you. I once thought I'd never fly again. He once thought respect could be bought. We were both wrong. But look at us now. Damian lowered his eyes. Arielle motioned toward him. Mr. Cross, would you join me on stage? He froze. The crowd murmured. Slowly, he stood and walked forward. He looked nervous, like a man walking through his own storm. She handed him the microphone. Tell them what you told me, she said. He hesitated, then spoke. When I made that bet, I thought it was just entertainment. I didn't realize I was exposing everything ugly in myself. Arrogance. Pride. Ignorance. The room was silent. He continued, when she took off that day, she didn't just prove me wrong. She saved me from myself. I thought I was powerful, but real power is what she showed the world: humility, patience, and grace. He paused, taking a deep breath. I can't undo what I did, but I can rebuild what I destroyed. That's why today, I'm donating $10 million to Project Rocket, not as a billionaire trying to look good, but as a man trying to do good. The room erupted. Applause thundered across the hangar. People stood, clapping, cheering, shouting. Arielle looked at him, eyes steady. Thank you, she said quietly. He smiled faintly. Don't thank me. I'm just trying to catch up. When the noise settled, Arielle took the mic again. This isn't about money, she said. It's about growth. About understanding that redemption isn't what you say, it's what you do. The crowd clapped again, softer this time, more thoughtful. After the event ended, people swarmed around Damian, shaking his hand, taking pictures. For the first time, he didn't look uncomfortable. He looked at peace. Arielle watched from across the room. Brooks came up beside her. You really forgave him, he said. She nodded. I had to. Holding hate keeps you on the ground. That evening, when the hangar emptied, only a few people remained: Arielle, Damian, and a handful of volunteers cleaning up. Damian approached her quietly. I've been asked to speak at a leadership conference next month, he said. They want me to talk about failure. She smiled. Sounds like your best subject. He laughed softly. You should come. People should hear from both of us. She shook her head. You tell your part. I'll keep doing mine here. He nodded. Fair enough. They stood in silence for a moment, both watching the planes outside. Do you ever miss flying for yourself? He asked. Every day, she said. But watching others take off feels just as good now. He smiled. You really did turn your pain into something beautiful. She looked at him. That's the only way to fly through it. He nodded once, then walked toward the exit. Halfway there, he stopped and turned back. Arielle. Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on me. She smiled. You gave me a reason not to. He left quietly, the hangar door closing behind him. Arielle stood alone, looking around. She saw the banner again: the sky is for everyone. She whispered, Rocket, we did it. The sky's wide open now. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from the little girl she'd met at JFK months ago, the one who said she wanted to fly. The text read, I passed my entrance test today. I'm gonna be a pilot. Arielle smiled, tears forming. She typed back, fly high. Make the sky proud. She set the phone down, walked to the open door, and looked up. The stars were out, scattered and endless. She whispered, we started with one flight. Now look what it became. Behind her, the hangar lights glowed warm and steady. It wasn't just a school anymore. It was a movement. A promise. A legacy built on forgiveness, courage, and belief. Arielle took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the horizon. Tomorrow, she said quietly, we teach the next one. And somewhere far above, a jet cut across the sky, smooth, quiet, steady, just like her. A full year passed since the day Arielle flew that jet and changed everything. The world still talked about it, but she had moved on. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing legacy. The Atlanta hangar was now more than a school. It was a symbol. The words Project Rocket were painted in bold letters across the roof, visible to any plane flying overhead. Inside, new students trained every day. They came from all over, different states, different stories, same fire. Arielle stood near the door early that morning, coffee in hand, watching the first class prepare their flight checklists. Their voices were full of excitement. Their eyes were full of dreams. It reminded her of herself years ago, before the crash, before the doubt, before the bet. Captain Brooks joined her, clipboard under his arm. "You ever get tired of hearing them yell, 'Clear prop,' every morning?" he asked. She smiled. "Never. It means the sky's still alive." He nodded. "You ready for the ceremony today?" She raised a brow. "What ceremony?" "You'll see," he said, grinning. By noon, the hangar filled again. Cameras, students, reporters. It looked like the first day all over, but this time the reason was different. It wasn't about a scandal or a viral story. It was about what came after. As Arielle walked to the stage, the crowd quieted. She wasn't wearing her coveralls today. She wore a simple white shirt with the Project Rocket logo. The audience stood and clapped. She raised her hand. "Sit down, y'all," she said, smiling. "We've got work to do." The laughter faded, and she began. "A year ago, I was a mechanic mopping oil off hangar floors. I didn't know the world would watch me climb back into a cockpit. I didn't know that one flight would change so much. But I did know one thing, I wasn't done flying." The crowd nodded. Everyone knew her story by heart, but hearing it from her still hit hard. She continued, "Project Rocket started as a small idea. A dream named after a friend I lost. But now it belongs to every one of you who believe that wings aren't limited to a few." Applause rose again. Arielle smiled. "We've trained over 600 pilots this year. Half of them women. Most of them first-generation flyers. That's not luck. That's proof that when you open a door, people walk through." Then she paused. "But today isn't about numbers. It's about gratitude." She looked to the side of the stage where Damian stood, clapping softly. She gestured for him to come up. He walked to the microphone. "When I first met Captain Monroe," he said, "I thought I was better than her. I thought success was measured in dollars. But she taught me something I'll never forget: you can't buy respect, you have to earn it." The crowd clapped. He continued, "Today, I want to make sure her work never stops. So, I'm proud to announce that Cross Dynamics and Project Rocket have officially merged to form the Rocket Foundation, a non-profit organization that will fund flight training for underprivileged students across the world." Gasps filled the room. Arielle turned to him, stunned. "You serious?" He nodded. "Completely. The world doesn't need another billionaire company. It needs more open skies." The crowd erupted in cheers. People stood, applauding. Some cried. Arielle took the mic back. "You know," she said, "if you told me a year ago that the same man who mocked me would help me build something this big, I'd have laughed you out of the hangar. But look at us now." The crowd laughed with her. She looked out over the sea of faces. This is what happens when people stop competing and start creating. When they stop judging and start lifting. That's what Rocket stood for, and that's what this will keep standing for. When the applause died down, she glanced toward the back of the hangar, where a group of little girls stood wearing toy pilot hats. She called them forward. "Come on up here," she said. "You're the future." They climbed the steps shyly. Arielle bent down to their level. "You see this sky behind me?" she asked, pointing out the open hangar door. "It doesn't care where you're from or what anyone says. It just waits for you to show up. One of the girls raised her hand. Miss Arielle, can we all be pilots too? Arielle smiled. You already are. You just haven't taken off yet. The crowd went wild again. After the ceremony, the students gathered outside for group photos. Reporters swarmed for quotes. Damian stood to the side, watching as Arielle signed autographs for kids, hugged parents, and encouraged new trainees. He turned to Brooks. She's not just building pilots. She's building leaders. Brooks nodded. And she doesn't even realize it. That night, after everyone left, Arielle stayed behind. She liked the quiet. She walked through the hangar, touching each plane as she passed. Every one of them had a story. Every student who sat in those seats carried a piece of her fight. She stopped by the first trainer plane she'd ever bought for Project Rocket. The paint was worn, but it still shined. She ran her hand over the tail, where a single word was printed, Rocket. She looked up at the empty sky and whispered, "We did it. It's yours now." Her phone buzzed. It was a message from the same girl who had texted her months ago, the one who said she passed her entrance test. The text read, "First solo flight today. I didn't panic once." Arielle smiled, her eyes wet. She typed back, "Told you the sky listens when you don't give up." She slipped the phone into her pocket and stepped outside. The sunset painted the horizon in gold. Behind her, the lights of the hangar flickered on automatically, casting a glow on the words "The sky is for everyone." Brooks walked up beside her. "You ever think about slowing down?" She shook her head. "Not while the next generation's still on the ground." He grinned. "You know, you could have retired a hero months ago." She looked up at the clouds. Heroes retire. Pilots just keep flying. They stood there in silence for a while. Then Brooks said, "You ever gonna fly that Gulfstream again?" Arielle smiled. "Maybe one more time. But not alone." He nodded. "Who'd you take?" She looked at the horizon again. Every student who still thinks they can't. A soft wind blew through the hangar. Somewhere far above, a plane crossed the fading light, leaving a white trail that stretched across the sky. Arielle watched it until it disappeared. "That's the goal," she said quietly. "To leave a mark that fades slow." She walked back inside, turned off the last switch, and looked once more at the planes lined up in a row. "Fly higher," she whispered. "Always higher. Because revenge ends. Fame fades. But inspiration lasts forever." If Arielle's journey touched your heart, please subscribe to support more stories that celebrate the human spirit. Share in the comments how this story made you feel and what you'll take away from it. And somewhere in that wide, endless sky, the spirit of Rocket Hale soared beside her, steady, proud, free.